The following is presented by the National Federation of the Blind of Arizona. Live the life you want.
Every year, I get to stand here and tell you about the work and the accomplishment of the National Federation of the Blind of Arizona. Every year, I talk to you about the work that we have accomplished. Our theme this year is Stronger Together, Reclaiming Our Shared Truth. The work that we do, the accomplishments of the membership, reflects our shared truth. And it shows that we, as a community, as a family, are stronger together. I'm going to start with a quote from George Washington, referred to as the father in Hamilton. The truth will ultimately prevail where there are pains taken to bring it to light. We're reclaiming our shared truth this weekend. This is not going to be a simple task. Like the founding of our country, this is going to require the work, the effort, and time of a diverse group of individuals known as the National Federation of the Blind of Arizona. George Washington. I chose a quote from George Washington because George Washington was the leader of the Continental Army that faced the British. He was our nation's first father, our nation's first president. He had to lead the building of a new nation. It was a divided nation, and it was one nation that did not always agree. Today, we face similar challenges. We are still a divided nation. And when I talk about the divided nation that I see several, but the way we as blind people are treated has definitely placed a divide between us and the rest of society. So as we start reclaiming our shared truths, I'm asking each and every one of you to come up with your own narrative about what that truth is, about what that experience is. I hope I'm not stealing some of Sean's thunder, but we're going to build a museum that talks about the history of the blind people's movement. That's going to be our museum. And it's going to be open to everyone, not just us. It is going to be a fully accessible museum. If you go to a museum today, half of what's there you can't understand. And that's because it's not accessible, because they've chosen or inadvertently not reached out to us to ask how to go about making it accommodating, accessible. There's going to come a time when each and every one of you, and actually that time is now, where each and every one of you, if you want to contribute stories, funds, you have that opportunity, because bringing about the Museum of the Blind People's Movement is going to take the work of the National Federation of the Blind and all of its members. We must stand together. The question I have for you today is, if you stand for nothing, what are you willing to fall for? Any Hamilton geek out there besides me? That's a quote from Hamilton, but it resonates with today. We, as a collective, must stand together, because if we don't, we'll be divided, and that will weaken us as an organization. So, you and me, NFB, we'll stand together. So, we hear that song a lot. It is an important part of our history. The history of that song, it was written and initially performed by all blind musicians. So, James Brown, who is the president of our Tennessee affiliate, wrote that song. And every time we hear it played, we're hearing James Brown sing that song. Now, we had a lot of accomplishments since our last convention, since our last family reunion. We attended Washington seminar. We sent a delegation to meet with our congressional offices, our representatives, our senators. We received some verbal commitments from them to sponsor some of the legislation. We taught them about some of the funding sources that the blind rely upon. We taught them about some of the legislation that exists to ensure that we are given equal access and opportunities. A lot of them don't know that. And as Jordan said in the legislative seminar yesterday, we pivoted because a lot of things started happening and changing that were going to affect us. Things like Texas v. Kennedy, where they're challenging the constitutionality of Section 504, something that will jeopardize other pieces of legislation that give us the rights. Well, they don't give us the right, they protect our rights. A lot of the rights that they are protecting are those inalienable rights that we all have. So, our legislative agenda, our legislative policy started at that Washington seminar. And we tried to build throughout the year on the Washington seminar. Now, I skipped over something. I think I should have said Phoenix seminar first. Our Phoenix seminar, you can mark it on your calendar for the next, I don't know how many years. It is the Tuesday following the Martin Luther King birthday celebration. It is always that Tuesday where we go and we talk to legislators at the Arizona State Legislature, and we share with them, the individual policy issues and priorities for the state of Arizona and its blind people. Now, our legislature goes into session essentially 1 week before we're there. And if we drop legislation at that, we're almost too late. We secured a commitment from Senator Kavanaugh yesterday to meet in September to begin talking about how do we bring about an electronic ballot and ballot returns for blind people, print-disabled individuals here in the state of Arizona. You deserve the right to cast an independent and private ballot. So we have work to do on that legislative front. Now, there are some fun things that we did this year. Fun for, especially for our children and youth. We had 2 STEM to use this year. We had one in Phoenix, and we had one in Tucson. I believe we had 42 people combined at our STEM to U. I heard somebody say this morning when the kids were up here, children are our future, and they absolutely are. STEM to U is an important program because for decades, blind children, even blind adults, have been told that they cannot participate in STEM fields. Well, STEM to U is proving the rest of society wrong. We had 2 NFB Bell Academies. Between those 2 programs, we had a total of 28 participants. And I did get my double cheeseburger from McDonald's with French fries, it's become an annual tradition. Once again, the NFB Bell Academy demonstrates to children, their families, the importance of Braille. We say it over and over again that the unemployment rate for blind people is 65 or so percent. I've heard it as high as 78%. But either way, that is significantly greater than the greater population unemployment rate. But when an individual learns Braille and uses Braille, the unemployment, underemployment rate for a blind Braille user, that group falls at around 90%. No, excuse me, let me rephrase that. The employment rate is around 90%. So Braille is an important part and aspect of what we do, and we try to incorporate into this convention opportunities to demonstrate individuals' abilities with Braille. This morning, you heard multiple individual children reading Braille. Our resolutions were presented and read in Braille. So the NFB Bell Academies are going to help strengthen the literacy and the employment rate of blind people. Now, in July, we sent a large delegation of individuals to our national convention. It was a rather large delegation. It was a rather loud delegation. And the energy that we bring to our national convention, I think, is well known and well respected. And that's each and every one of you. So thank you. our energy, our passion for advocacy, and some pretty persistent conversations with President Riccobono bared some fruit this year. At the board meeting, he announced that the 2030 National Convention would be here in Phoenix, Arizona. Now, Now, our host hotel is going to be the Sheraton downtown, so a few blocks away. But the Hyatt Regency downtown, who has hosted us for 6 years, is one of the backup hotels, and we've booked, I believe, about 900 room nights here. So I say that because it demonstrates the importance of partnerships, of relationships, and why we do some of the things that we do. And this year, since our last convention, President Riccobono and John Berggren were here. They came over to the Hyatt, they were over at the Sheraton, and decided that the time is now. Arizona has worked hard, and you, as members of the National Federation of Arizona, deserve the right to be a host for our national convention. Now, we had 153 people registered at the National Convention this year for in-person. 153. That was larger than the California delegation. They have 50 million people living in that state. Well, then it's shrinking. But I think one of the last censuses still had it pretty close to 50. Texas has about 40 million and growing. We had more than Texas. The city of New York has more people living in it than the entire state of Arizona, and we had more than the entire state of New York. So when 2030 comes around, there should be no doubt about who's number one in attendance. And just for your knowledge, we were number 3 in attendance. The state of Maryland and Louisiana had more people than us, which I can understand. We have beat the state of Maryland in attendance, and that was back in 2019 when we had our backyard barbecue up in Las Vegas. So beating them is definitely doable in 2030. Now let's talk about this convention for a minute. In 2019, I believe we had about 302 registered participants for our annual state convention. That's a lot of people. We were here at this hotel. Then the pandemic struck. And we went virtual for 2 years. In 2020 and 2021, but in 2022 we were in Tucson, and we only had, I think it was about 160 or 70 people registered. And we knew that there were still a lot of blind people out there that hadn't found us. And since then, we've been trying to figure out what are we going to do, to increase our membership. And the best way to increase the membership is each and every one of us talking to other blind people that we know that aren't connected with us and telling them about the National Federation of the Blind. Telling stories to people we encounter about the myths, the false myths, and what the real truths are about blind people. I was speaking to a nurse that worked for Aetna Insurance, my health insurance. And she was talking about working with blind and visually impaired people. And I said, well, let's educate you. I said, our preferred term is low vision because it's a more accurate description without demeaning words. Because when you say visually impaired, there's that automatic thought that we're not capable of doing things. But we know in the National Federation of the Blind, one, we live the lives we want. We can do what we set out to do. She told me in that phone call that she was going to send an email out to her entire unit and tell them that. And while on the phone, she got several emails back in response thanking her for that. What that told me was that when we educate individuals about blindness, it makes a difference. So, now, there's some other accomplishments that I want to talk about. Savvy Services for the Blind set out on a path years ago to become a certified structured discovery training center. They received their first certification in Tucson. And this year they received their certification at their second training facility here in Phoenix. So when I talk about the importance of partnerships and relationships, I look at Savvy and say that they're all in. They stand for something. And they're willing to fall for us. So thank you, Savvy Services for the Blind, and all of you who have been trained there. Now, 2030 seems like a long time away, but it's really not. Our work begins today. There are going to be a lot of opportunities for each and every one of you to contribute to putting on the best convention that the National Federation of the Blind has had. So I call upon you to rise up, and don't throw away your shot.
For more information about the National Federation of the Blind of Arizona, visit us at az.nfb.org or on our Facebook page at facebook.com/blindarizona.